This is a comics podcast.
Mhm.
But anyway, so my brother wanted to make comics and didn't know how to get started, and I wanted to help him, and I'd always enjoyed writing, and I love comics in theory. I just hadn't been reading them. So he and I just started educating ourselves on the comic scene, like what comics
Mhm.
look like now, and how, what goes into the process, what a comic strip looks like. Yeah, we just learned a lot together and started going to conventions, and I wrote some short stories for him, and that led to me working with other artists and just sort of took off. My first printed book was Last Sons of America at Boom Studios. And
Mhm.
that led to more books at Boom and Archaea, but also eventually a DC book. I was discovered through Last Sons of America by an editor there, and they wanted to do an Aquaman story, so that worked out nice.
Yeah,
And
I think that was that the Aquaman 1 Rebirth.
it was the Aquaman annual, I think 2017, maybe 2017,
Okay.
2018. Yeah, it was a 2-issue arc that they just used as they combined it and made a 40-page annual out of it. Really proud of it. I mean, the art is amazing, and yeah, it was really fun to do. And the editors on that book were Brian Cunningham and Amadeo Torturo, and then Diego was on it too. Amadeo was the one though that I had the most interaction with on that book. Amadeo is a great editor, great guy. We got along super well on that project.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know this at the time, but he's also a huge D&D nerd.
Right. Okay.
It's like his passion. Like when he's not doing comics, he's doing that. I mean, he went to school himself for art as well. He's a very talented cartoonist, but he loves D&D like on a crazy level. So at some point he approached me. He started moving from the main continuity DC books into like Vertigo and DC Black Label stuff. And he reached out to me like, man, would you want to do how do you say it? Would you want to do a horror story in a world where there's like wizards and shit? I think those are his exact words. And I mean, what are you gonna say to that? So I was like, yeah, totally. I mean, I was never, growing up, I never really had like a crew that was into D&D like that, but I'm into it in theory, and I love fantasy fiction. So I, put something together, and then Amadeo just ran with it and pitched it to the group, and then they picked it up. They not only picked it up, they were like, yeah, we got to have at least 12 issues for this and really do it right.
Yeah.
So now like we have 12 issues plus the source book that's coming out that's tied it into Dungeons and Dragons, and each issue is longer. Like there's 24 pages of interior art plus 6 pages of back matter. And it's like, because I've been world building my ass off for this book.
Yeah.
And they want to use it all. They want to put a lot of it into the actual book, which is cool. So yeah, I mean, they wanted to do it, and they're really giving it this incredible artwork, the increased page count, the amazing covers. Like they're really giving it all they got. It's been a real pleasure.
That's so cool, because obviously with shows like Stranger Things coming out, that's where I guess for a lot of the youth of today, that's the first time they would have seen like D&D, is where like Will the card, like they're playing around and they're dealing with all like the mystical arts and who they want to be and who they're pretending to be. So I guess like if you're really into that, to be given the opportunity to write a comic on that must have been like a dream come true.
Oh my God, totally. I mean, yeah, it's because it's in part because I love it, in part because it's having this really great resurgence now. So it's perfect.
No, it's wicked. I mean, so with that, is there obviously with the ongoing The Last God and stuff, is there any other projects that you're working on at the moment, or is there anything you can actually talk about without getting stuff of caution out of your mouth?
The book I'm working on actively now, I'm doing a book at Aftershock Comics called Kill a Man with Steve Orlando. Steve is co-writing it with me. Alec Morgan's doing the artwork. It's actually an MMA book. It's a book about an MMA fighter who gets a gay MMA fighter who gets outed at the press conference and loses everything and has to kind of fight his way back. It's a story I'm sorry?
Yeah. I'm a massive MMA fan, so that'd be definitely added to my list.
Awesome, dude. I used to be a big fan of one of your boys. Dan Hardy was a guy that I used to follow a lot. I love that. Yeah. He was so exciting to watch.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's see. So Crap. What are we talking about? Now I want to talk about MMA. Okay, so Killer Man.
It's fine. We can talk about MMA. Yeah, Killer Man.
So yeah, I'm doing that. That's going to be put out in 2 like prestige volumes at Aftershock. It's really cool. It's like 2 60-page volumes. I'm really excited about it. So there's that. We just released an anthology at DC that came out yesterday called Crimes of Passion that just hit. And that's like that lineup of artists and writers in that book is sick, man. It's like some really talented people in that book. So that's exciting. I'm doing Marvel Zombies right now, which is coming out in April. And I think they're going to release those issues for rapid fire. I think we did a one-shot last October, and now there's a 4-issue mini coming out that follows up on that one-shot, and they begin in April.
Yeah, because we had the conversation about that the other day, didn't we? Like, I think quite a few Marvel fans, because obviously Marvel Zombies has been around for years. It's had his resurgence and it's had his resurrections and stuff like that. I think with the one that came out towards the end of last year, I think people thought that it wasn't communicated as a one-shot. I think it was like the way that he ended, and I think people were expecting it to carry on. So when it did come out, and I found out you was doing it in Hayek, Lee is doing the artwork, I was like, I'm really confused about this. Is this a follow-on from the one that came out last year, or is it a new chapter in it? So yeah, it's good that you've just clarified that. So
yeah, I know people do seem confused about it. The one-shot was meant to set up the miniseries that's about to come out. So I think it all kind of came together pretty quick. It all got announced like right after, Kirkman dropped Walking Dead. I think it was all like, I think that aspect of it kind of got lost in the marketing shuffle. But it was always meant to lead into this 4-issue thing.
Yeah, because I think in the one shot, there's like you've got Fantastic Four, you've got Thor, you've got Wolverine, you've got Captain Marvel, Captain America, Iron Man. They're all in it, and I think now looking back on it in hindsight, you can kind of see that it was a one shot because you had so many amazing superheroes and everything in one comic at one moment. It was only going to end one way, so it's going to be really interesting to see what you have come up with for the 4 or 6 part. Did you say 4
for now?
No,
we're really stoked. I personally am really stoked for the story that comes next. It's coming together really great. It's been unbelievably fun to write. I'm doing more Big 2 stuff that I can't talk about yet, and I'm dying to talk about it, but like because the things that are coming out are so huge, man. But I just can't talk about it yet. But it's you're going to be stoked though. I'm really excited.
Cool. I don't know if you've seen one of the questions from one of my mates, Perry Comics. It says, Gods of Skull Island was great. Do you think you'll be doing any more Boom Studio projects? And how different is it working from an indie publisher to the DC powerhouse?
Oh, man, thank you. Yeah, that question's about a Kong thing that I did. And I was very proud of that story, too. Chad Lewis crushed it. Thank you for reading that, man. There's nothing happening at Boom right now, but I would love to go back there. I mean, Boom Studios is full of super cool people. I've done a bunch of books with Eric Harburn. He's a great editor, and I would love to work with him again. Any of the editors I've worked with really I'd love to work with him again. Nothing on the docket there now, but I would happily go back. Been a little busy just lately. It is different going from an indie publisher to DC, but there are still similarities. Like either way, you're working with licensed books potentially. Like I did Kong, Boom, and Dark Crystal, and Adventure Time. Anytime you're doing a licensed book, there are aspects of that kind of just come with it. You're playing with someone else's toys.
Yeah.
It hasn't been that different for me because the editors have been great both places. They've given me as much creative license as they could in both cases. It's all about the editors you work with, really, in my experience. And both places are blessed with good people. And actually, the biggest DC thing I'm doing right now is a creator-owned book, The Last God. So it's been kind of similar, a pretty similar process to Last Sons of America and Warlords of Appalachia and my other, all my creator-owned stuff that I did at Boom. And actually, Warlords of Appalachia kind of planted the seeds for things that became Last God too. Like in Warlords of Appalachia, I was writing music for that book. We printed sheet music on the back cover of every issue. There's tons of world building in that one too, because I was like basically reinventing America after another Civil War had happened. And so there's stuff that I worked into that world that, like that was my first experimentation really with like crazy world building that now I take to a whole nother level in Last God. So it's actually been a pretty similar process in that regard.
Yeah, because I noticed that because in the Wars of Appalachia, you've got like, it's like, for me, it reminded me of the Lord of the Rings, you know, when it starts and they're going through like the mountains of Mordor and stuff like that, and you see like the layout of the land, the map and everything like that. There's similarities there, and I think that was just like fantastic, just getting to know like the world, the where it is, the where, the what for, and where everything is, and then to see it in Last Gods as well. Like, this is great. This is like, you can actually see where they're battling, where they're building the war, and it was just amazing to see.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's the map is not my idea. That might have been Amadeo that was like, we got to have a map in there. And I mean, I already had a map kind of in mind anyway. I just wasn't planning on printing it, but then we got to really flesh it out and make it the real deal. And got an actual cartographer who does that stuff at the coast.
Because like, is there one of the questions I've got is, so obviously working with is DC, as Perry Comics has said, it's a massive powerhouse, but are there different different things you're allowed to do with DC Black Label than you are for DC normal comics? So obviously, like DC Black Label's aimed at like the over 18s and stuff like that, but there's certain things you can and can't do.
Yeah, for sure. The short answer is yes. The main not main titles, the main, you know, DC books, they all in some way at least potentially tie together, and you have to respect that. You can't, I mean, because it's such a big sandbox with so many moving parts in it, you have to be mindful of everything else that's happening at the same time. In DC Black Label, now I'm kind of speaking out of school here because my book is not technically in the same continuity, is not in DC continuity. It's literally its own world. That doesn't tie in. You're not going to see Batman or Superman in Last God ever. Like, well, I guess you should never say never, but there are no plans. It's very much its own thing. So, but I mean, but there's books like Batman Damned, right? That that Az did there, and that book, I believe. I mean, there's characters that matter that die. There's all this craziness that you can't get away with. Well, for one thing, like language and violence and all that, you can ramp those things up in the books like The Last God or Batman Damned or whatever that you could never get away with. And just
you can show willies. I mean, Batman Damned is obviously, it's known for showing Batman's
right. So
little Batman, as it were. I was lucky enough to get the first printing of that, so I feel very privileged. I'm not sure if that's the right thing to say that I've seen.
But there's that. I mean, there's obviously that thing happened. So like there's definitely just a higher threshold for violence and language and all that. But it's also, you can also get away with story elements that you can't, like you can do. It's not beholden to continuity the way a main, like the way the comic Batman monthly comic is, you know. So there's all kinds of freedom that you get there, but it's also and plus just the identity of Black Label is meant to be grittier, you know. So it's, you know, they want that potentially. Yeah.
And I think there's definitely a big market out there. I mean, since the likes of yourself have started doing it, you've got like Joe Hill with like the Hill House comics and stuff like that. Right. For me personally, there's been a massive surge within like horror comics, adult themed comics aimed at the more community out there that want to read stuff like that. They don't just want to live in this fantasy world and hear about like the hero always saves the day. They want to find out like the darker, grittier stuff, as you were saying.
Right. And it's not just about making it dark. It's also that I think a lot of the best, well, that's just my opinion, but a lot of the best DC stories over the years, over the generations, have been these standalone things like Dark Knight Returns, you know, or Watchmen. You know, those. I mean, in modern, like if those books were to come out now, they would be Black Label books. You know, like this Dark Knight Returns does not go on the shelf. Is not a companion piece to the monthly Batman book, you know, it's its own thing. And same thing with Batman Damned, same thing with the Watchmen book. Sorry, the Watchmen. Same thing with Watchmen. God, what else? I mean, Mr. Miracle is not really, I don't think that's not a Black Label book, but like the fact that it's a standalone contained thing, kind of sets it apart, you know, and a lot of those stories that are not beholden to the ongoing monthly grind turn out to be some of the best stories. So I think they wanted a place where they could tell stories about those characters that can exist, you know, in the multiverse umbrella and not be beholden to other stuff.
Yeah. I mean, are you seeing the questions that like the guys are putting up? I think we've got a massive fanboy here, by the way, Perry Comics.
I love that.
He says, yeah, it's crazy. I never see that in the DC. It's almost like you're opening up an avenue to a fantasy realm in DC. Is this your own creation, or did they put you to write this story?
Great question. Thanks for your enthusiasm. Hopefully Perry heard that thing I said about Amadeo reaching out to me. Amadeo did not have an idea for the story. He literally said, do you want to pitch a horror story in a world where there's wizards and shit? So that became Last God. Okay. So I took that concept. So I don't know if I don't know if Amadeo's going to be getting royalties from that or not, but he probably deserves it. So yeah, from that point on, it became my story. And it's all my stuff so far. There have been a lot of changes. Like when I first started, I didn't want to use any races that were even remotely similar to the standard stuff. I didn't want, dwarves and elves and all the usual things at all. And we end up kind of going back the other direction and using those things kind of to make it more accessible to fantasy fans who tabletop gamers as well, people who have these standard classes and races that they game with. They wanted to give them something to hold on to, even though we're doing our own take. So the elves, the Elva in this, AELVA in this are not the happy, shiny, immortal elves that we always see. Not always, but like in Tolkien, for example, like in Tolkien, elves in theory live forever and they're kind of godlike and they're just kind of better than us in all the ways. They are literally shiny. In Last God, they are a subjugated Aboriginal race, the original inhabitants of this continent that have been enslaved and subjugated. So they're still better than us in some ways. Like they're Godborn. They have potential for magic powers, and we don't. And there's ways in which they're still elves that in ways we recognize, but we really wanted to make them different. And the dwarves that we're going to see, the Dwaros in my story, which was, I took that word from Tolkien. Dwaro was Tolkien's word for the plural of dwarf at one point. But they're not anything like you recognize. They have, gosh, I shouldn't get into what they are. We're going to see them in a few issues, but they're not what you expect. They're different. Like you will recognize them as dwarves, but they're also very different. And we also have new creatures like the Ursulon and all that, like the big monster thing that Science relies on. So some of my original concepts for ways to set it apart from other fantasies still there. But we also wanted to make it more approachable to fans of, things they already love,
Yeah. I mean, I was absolutely hooked. I was obviously reading the first one, and then you find out that King Tyre he's already turned in the first comic. You're like, is this really happening? And then obviously like issue 2 and issue 3, you find out more about it, how his brother was dragged under. I don't know what's the name of that creature that literally drags him under, and then as he goes under, he's like, just leave me, let me go. This is the most amazing thing.
Okay. Yeah, it's super creepy. I didn't give that particular thing a name. In the back of that, issue, there's a story, it's like a folktale, an in-world folktale about a creature called Grendel, which is obviously a play on the name Grendel, but it's not about that particular creature. There's just a parallel between the folktale, because in the folktale, the kid is going off. It's kind of like Roland and Bert Allen going off to save his sister. It's about a kid trying to find his sister who has been taken by this creature, and finds that it's taken her shape and all that. So because of that, there's a parallel with Tyr losing his brother Torma and finding, and it starts to, take his body, in a different way. But that's that creature does not have a specific name. It's just the flowering dead in the book are not they're not just zombies. They're not really. I didn't want them to be just another take on a familiar monster.
Yeah,
I want it to be its own thing. So they're not like one of the things I put in the original pitch. Like the flowering dead are not zombies. They are profanities, I think is what I put in there. And they take all living things and just profane them. They combine them. They change them. So that creature that we saw in the mare in the marshlands was a combination of different creatures, and like not just animals, but also like plant life. And it became this crazy thing that you see in the book.
Yeah, that's just great. So is it six parts? No,
it's 12.
Oh, it's wow.
Yeah, 12. It's going to be, so there's going to be 6 issues, and then the 4th book, which is called, so they've been calling it a source book because that's what it is. Mm-hmm. Like it's going to have a lot of information you can use to make your own campaigns in a tabletop setting in the world of Cain and Noon. But it's like the proper name for it is Tales from the Book of Ages. The Book of Ages is something that you're about to see in the next issue. And we're going to see information on all the races and all that. So anyway, before I get into that too much, it's 6 issues. That is the first arc, and then source book, and then another 6.
Yeah, because I noticed, I think it was at the end of the first comic that the name that popped out to see Jim Lee is on there.
Jim Lee is what now?
He was, I think it was one of the creative. He said he definitely said his name.
Well, he's one of the highest ranking dudes in DC. He didn't have a creative role in this book, but he is like one of the overlords in the DC offices.
Yeah. So when I see that, I was like, wow, this is insane. But it's just so.
He was one of the big champions of the book, like right out of the gate, because I didn't realize this. But apparently, Jim Lee's a big fantasy fan, which is really exciting to hear.
Oh, wow.
So he definitely wanted this book to succeed, which was nice to hear. But yeah, I think he's co-publisher technically. Is that right? I think he's co-publisher. Anyway, but yeah, he's a big fantasy head. So I'm looking forward to seeing him again. I would love to hear his thoughts on how the book's shaping up.
So I mean, obviously, because are you based in Washington?
I am, yeah, Washington DC, Baltimore area.
So I mean, do you have to? Are you, because obviously DC and Marvel, they've got writers and they've got artists all around the world and stuff like that. Are you, because you're basically there, do you get more input to going into the offices and working with like the big heads like Jim Lee and stuff like that on a regular basis, or is it still communication over the phone, email, deadlines, etc.?
Well, they're actually not. DC used to be in New York, and now they're actually in Burbank, California. So they're on the other coast. So I'm not over there. But no, I have been out there a number of times. Whenever I go, I make a point to go to the office and say hello. And if there's a meeting to be had, that's when it happens.
Yeah.
But no, we it's all pretty much email and sometimes phone.
So just like any other normal work, it's not all the glitz and glamour that people obviously think it is.
No, I mean it's pretty cool. I mean it's really fun to work with them. I mean the people in that office are so cool, man. Like I really, it's always a pleasure working with people in DC and Marvel as well. A lot of really cool people in this business.
All right, so another character, Perry. Perry's on the question, so we've definitely got Fanboy, and it's actually great to have him on. Are there any characters you'd like to write on DC for back label? Maybe some Deadman or Lobo. He's got to be making an appearance soon, no?
Yeah, I don't know Lobo as well as I should. Something about Lobo never spoke to me as much as some of the other characters. It's I mean, he's cool, of course. Everyone says he's cool. Everyone knows he's cool. I've read, I think, every word that Hellblazer has ever spoken in panel. Like I'm a huge Hellblazer fan. So I would love to write John Constantine, of course. And
he's from where? He's from London. He's a Londoner.
I know, dude. I can't wait to get over there. Yeah, I'm hoping to make it over to a con over there this year, man. We'll see. But yeah, I would love to write Hellblazer anytime, day or night. Like that's my guy. Deadman would be super cool though.
Yeah.
And the guy that drew Lost Boys the U-Boat Bremen for me on my site, Steve Beach, that dude is like a horror savant, and he would be the perfect guy, honestly, to draw either one of those books. But Dead Man, he did a version of Dead Man that's just like the best thing I've ever seen. Yeah, I love the Dead Man. I have the story for the ventriloquist I really want to do. The Batman villain, ventriloquist and Scarface. I would love to do that there. I have a couple other ideas I want to do there that I shouldn't talk about, but yeah, I mean, Black Label for life. I'd love to.
Yeah, so I mean, so this is just amazing. Like, I'm just sitting here and I'm like, I'm exactly like Perry Comics. Like, oh damn, hell yeah! Like, it's a massive motor. It's not all the time that you get to sit down and speak to like a writer of a comic book and like a fan of DC and everything like that. So I mean, obviously working with DC and stuff, is there any projects that you've done over the years that you thought, wow, this is absolutely amazing, this is one of my highlights of my career?
Man, I'm just getting into one of those right now. Well, I mean, Last God for sure. Because I mean, Last God, I'm doing the creator-owned book at DC with all the clout of DC behind it. I'm just world building all day long, every day. Like I'm just making up religions and cultures and languages and like fighting systems and like all these little bitty things like in the about each one that it doesn't all make it into the book. A lot of it just goes into my files that doesn't come out until I need it, you know. But it's important to me to have that stuff. It's important for me to have in any fantasy story, especially, there really needs to be that depth. You need to. Okay, so for example, this is a weird deep cut, but I do some. You're an MMA fan, so I'm also an MMA fan, and I practice it some too. I do like Muay Thai and Jiu-Jitsu, and I've done a little boxing. And the term southpaw, okay, that's a term that doesn't like it just means a left-handed fighter, but that word has a history. You know, like there's something that makes it's just interesting. Like there's all these you pass on the street, you pass you know, a street sign that has a name, and you never learn the history of why that street is called that. But there's usually, you know, there's a person behind that. Now there's a whole history of like how this place around us came to be, and like the people that we talk to, they all have their own history, and it's important to me to make all these little backstories that never get seen, you know, because it matters that depth is there. I feel like readers can tell when that depth is not there. If it's all just surface level crap, I feel like it shows, you know?
Yeah. And you can tell that like when people just like read the comments and they just skim over it they won't like get involved. And I guess you've got to have that thought process and that depth of interest in what you're doing to create something that the readers are going to actually follow through. They're not just going to flip it after one page and think, yeah, I'm not going to read, because there's quite a few comics out there that I've read one or two comics issues and I'm like, I'm not really bothered about following it up. So I guess you've got to get them hooked. I think there's a saying out there, if you can get them hooked after the first 8 pages, you've got them for the rest of the issues. And it's very true. Like some of the comics I've read, whether it be from Boom or IDW, I've read them, I thought, yeah, these are good. And then after about 2 or 3 issues, I'm lost. Like there's one comic out there at the moment and it's Red Mother. Oh yeah. And I was the first comic was really good. I was really getting into it. And then it kind of just on the second issue, it kind of slowed down. It was kind of it weren't really getting anywhere fast. And they'd built up everything for all this big action. And then when I think it ended and I was just like, I'm not really bothered if I'm going to carry this comic on.
Yeah, it happens. Comics are hard.
Yeah, no, it is. Yeah, and it's just like, yeah, I think with The Last God, there's cliffhangers, and you're always wanting more. You get to the end, you're like, oh my god, I've read 35 pages of it already. I want to continue. Is there any more? And then
thanks, man. I love hearing that. Yeah,
you got to wait for 2 months until it comes on again. So,
well, thanks, dude. I appreciate that. Yeah, so this book. You asked me about professional highlights, and doing Last God with Ricardo on the art is just an honor, you know. That guy is just crushing it. Every issue, every page is like ridiculous. I get his art in my email and I just like giggle like a little kid. Like I can't believe how good this looks. It's just
Scott.
What's that?
Was that the first time you'd worked together?
Yeah.
Scott.
I mean, yeah. So I did the Aquaman thing with Max Fumara, who's also like a freak artist. He's like incredible. And I loved it. And I got the trade. I wasn't reading the monthly comic at the time, the Aquaman annual. Well, I was until I wrote it. But then after it came out, I wasn't reading the latest monthly. So when the trade came out that had that annual in the back of it, I opened it up to see. It's like, oh man, this art looks so good. And then I saw the monthly issues as well in that same trade. And I was like, oh my God, this is good too. Who did this? And it was Ricardo. And I'd never seen his work before. And then when I was like, okay, I got to keep an eye on this dude. And he also did one of the Last Night's Metal book. I think he did the Murder Machine one, like when they were doing Metal, like the Batman Cyborg hybrid. He did that issue, and that was insane too. And I think he did like the big painting of all the Dark Knights together that looks so rad. And then when Amadeo was helping me put together Last God, he's like, what do you think about using Riccardo Federici? I was like, Jesus, will he do this? Because he's like the best, for like the perfect guy for this particular book, because we needed something that made it look, that can grab that like Conan fantasy, Robert E. Howard look, somebody who could do something that looks like it belongs with those Frank Frazetta covers. And Ricardo's totally that guy. So it's just an honor to work with that dude all the time.
Yeah, because there's nothing out there like Last Gods at the moment.
No, thanks.
Nothing out there, which is why I think it's so refreshing when it comes out every month. You're like, and I find myself having to read every book, every issue before I read the new one.
Oh, well, thanks.
So I think number 4 came out. I think it was like 2 or 3 weeks ago, and I was like, read 1, 2, 3, read it up again, and I just find myself wanting to do that. So when it gets to number 12, I've got an hour cut out just to read.
Kick ass.
Fully up to date. But
I can confidently say no one is putting as much time in on the other comics as I am on this. It's nuts. Just those little stories and songs and things that go in the back of the issue. It's like writing a whole nother comic as far as the time commitment, but it's so worth it, man. Like it really matters.
And I guess so. I assume like, so when DC come to you and say, right, we've got this idea, do they place the artist against your writing, or is it like, right, we've got Phillip lined up, we're going to put you with this artist? How does that whole process work?
It varies a lot, actually. Right now I'm working on a book that they came to me and said, do you want to do this book? We're thinking of this person to do the artwork. But I mean, that's not how it happens. That's not how it usually happens. Like most of the stuff that I put together, they've got me, like they'll have me pitch something. I'll pitch it, and then they see what the pitch is, and then they'll choose an artist based on that, based on like what the editor envisions the book to be, that's how it usually goes. Other times I'll have like a whole issue in the can before somebody's put on it, but that's not usually the case because because of the monthly, the way comics work, how they have to come out every month. Usually you've got the artist lined up before the issue's done. So it varies a lot from book to book.
And then are the deadlines that you have the same for every book, or does it vary? So say you're working on, obviously you got Last Gods, there's 12 issues in that. Are the deadlines for every issue the same, or does it range? I mean, obviously DC or Marvel would set the deadline for it, but do you get some leeway with it saying, right, there's more going into issue 12 than there was in issue 3, I'm going to need longer?
It's usually on the same. Okay. And so if the comic is the train, the track is the schedule, and it's getting built as the train is moving.
Right. Okay. That's a great analogy.
So it kind of varies. I had a lot of script done before Ricardo got started, and Ricardo got started way before issue 1 came out, because I mean, you look at his artwork, there's an insane amount of detail in there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It seems like it would be mad slow to he's actually not. He's actually pretty, for what you're seeing on the page, he's actually pretty damn quick. But we wanted to give him, he's also doing like covers and other stuff. for other books and other projects. So we wanted to give him a big head start, So it kind of depends. Yeah, we just kind of we do whatever we can as we go, basically. Like we do the best we can as we're in motion. Make sure make sure nothing gets turned out late,
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, for like Marvel Zombies, you're working with like In-hyuk Lee. I think I'm pronouncing that right. Am I pronouncing that right?
I've heard it pronounced In-hyuk Lee. Yeah, I don't really know if that's correct, but that's what I've heard.
So, have you worked with him before, or is this again? Is this a new chapter in?
Well, his art is actually just the covers on Marvel Zombies. The interiors are by Leonard Kirk on Marvel Zombies. It's and the covers are amazing. Like I just recently signed on with a company called Scott's Collectibles, and they also represent Lee. So we're gonna hopefully do some conventions together and sign some books together. But yeah, Leonard's doing the interiors on those. So because of that, like the covers matter obviously hugely, but I very rarely have any interaction with the cover artists on what they do for the covers. Usually all my interactions with the interior artists.
Mm-hmm. But I mean, so who's your favorite villain since you've grown up? I mean, or before we get to that question, so earlier you mentioned that your brother is an artist and he was doing that. Is he still doing stuff like that? Is he still doing the comics?
Yeah. Well, yeah, he didn't know what to do to get into the industry and like what to do next with his life and all that. And I was in the Army and I was like, well, there's a job in the Army called multimedia illustrator that you can do where you can literally draw for the Army, and that's the gig. And they'll train you in all the software that you kind of need to know for comics anyway, like Illustrator and Photoshop and I think InDesign as well. So he ended up living with me for a while, and he and I just kind of trained up to join the Army and to take the ASVAB, like the military exam you need to get in and all that. So he trained up to do all that stuff and got into the Army and did 6 years there. And now he's finishing up his time at Savannah College of Art and Design. And he's about to get done. So it's pretty cool. So he's drawing comics at school right now, and hopefully he'll get out soon and we'll start doing books.
Oh wow, that'd be. I guess you couldn't think of anything better than to do some comics with your brother. I guess.
Yeah, I mean that's been the idea this whole time, really. That's why I got started doing this. I wanted to kind of get a leg up so that by the time he was done with his schooling and his Army time, that I'd be in a place to help him get off the ground and do some books. Now it's worked out.
I mean, so obviously you talk about like the U.S. Army and stuff like that. So you're a member of the Army Field Band. Yeah. I mean, that's like chalk and cheese, isn't it? It's like drawing and writing comics like The Last God and doing stuff for DC Black Label, and then on the flip side, you're playing the trumpet. Is it the trumpet you play?
It is, yeah.
Trumpet in a band. How does one go about doing that? It seems incredible.
Well, you just get up and you work all day, and that's the truth. I just I have when I'm home, when I'm in garrison, they say. We rehearse together. The concert band that I play with rehearses together. And I'm also a member of a brass quintet that is made up of members of that group. And we also rehearse. And I have other jobs I do for the unit as well. I'm the chief writer, editor. So I arrange for stuff to get written and edited that goes out in newsletters or albums or whatever. And when I'm not doing that, I'm making comics. I'm trying to be a decent father and writing comics for publishers. It's a lot of work to do because I've been very fortunate in comics, more fortunate than I expected, frankly. And I keep getting these gigs that I cannot and will not say no to, like, cause I want to do these books that I'm working on. But I still also value the work I do with the Army Field Band. So I'm doing the best I can with both jobs right now.
So you speak about being like a father and stuff like that. So I guess your children, if you've got more than one, are they your biggest fans and also your biggest critics?
I've got the one son, and he's only 5, but he's a fan for sure. He's been really cool. I did a signing at Midtown Comics in New York. I guess it was around Christmas time, sort of. And I think it was before that. Sorry. Anyway, so it was around November, and my son was with me. He was there, and there's a poster there of like Marvel Zombies or something, Last God maybe, and he just kind of poked some random dude, and he's like, "My dad made that." And,
that's so cool.
And other times he'll be like, he'll I'll take him to the store. My local comic shop is Third Eye Comics in Annapolis, which is like this incredible shop. And I take him in there, and he'll pick up something that looks cool, and he's like, "Did you make this one?" I was like, "No," and I'll be like, and it's like, that's pretty cool. Yeah,
I mean, I've got 3 boys. I've got a 7-year-old, I've got a 2-year-old, and I've got like a 16-month-old. And
oh man, congrats!
It's non-stop. It's non-stop. And it's funny because obviously the 7-year-old, he's in like second year of school and stuff, and they had to do like this writing and review thing on his homework. And he came home one day and he was like, "Oh, I said I'd be really good for this because my dad reviews comics, so I thought this would be a great job for him." So I ended up sitting down and like reviewing this thing with him, and it was great because he was like,
"Oh, that's awesome.
My dad's Geeky Guy Comics," and I'm like, "No one knows that. No one knows, you know what I mean?" And it was just great that he was like my little biggest fan. So it's fantastic. So when I get like the t-shirts come through and the jumpers come through, he's like, "Oh, can I have one?" But it's great.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's so cool.
Yeah, it's fun to see. And it's when I can't tell you what he's into now because it's a book I'm writing on that's not been announced yet. But whenever I'm doing a book, he'll hear me talking about it, or I'll be kind of like brainstorming stuff, and he'll get into it, and then we'll watch the movie together, or like some of the old comics or whatever. And it's awesome. It's really fun to have him be a fan of it. And he's so into both DC and Marvel. For a while, it was like straight DC. He was like, he knew every C-list character, and now it's both. And it's been really fun to see that go. See him go through all that.
Yeah, I've always been. It's that battle of good or evil, Marvel, DC. I've always edged towards Marvel.
Yeah.
And since DC Black Labels, they've started to do something different, and they're pushing the forefront now. They're at the front, and it's just DC. Like for me, DC's really pushing it. Like it's so different, isn't it? Even if you compare their movies, like DC movies are more like the Black Label than the fiction and fantasy of the Marvel world.
Yeah.
I think now that it's being portrayed in the comics, I think you're going to see a lot of people's heads being turned thinking, "I was into Marvel," and it's all like, it's a bit of comedic value now. Now I'm going to go to the DC. It's more about the dark humor, the grittiness, the darkness of the actual DC underworld, as it were. So, I mean, with the likes of like Harley Quinn and Joker Harleen, like some of the stuff, you mentioned it earlier, some of the stuff that you're able to talk about within them comics, you'd never see Marvel doing anything like that.
It's true. They just have a different take, and it's, you wonder if like about the corporate influence on that, because I mean they're both owned, but they're both owned by big corporations, right? Like I don't see Disney being willing to besmirch the good name of Spider-Man, you're not gonna see like a rape story like where Spider-Man has like a prominent role.
Yeah.
It's just not his brand. Like Spider-Man needs to be shiny and funny and just fun, and that's Spider-Man's thing. Like it's not that. I'm not to say that all Marvel characters are like that. You've got some seriously messed up Marvel characters that you could do super gritty stuff with. I mean, you could totally do a Black Label Moon Knight book, or Wolverine, or like there's all there's 100 characters you could use and do that kind of thing. But yeah, right now they don't seem to be in that mindset, like they're doing a very different thing. Black Label is its own thing, and DC's crushing it. And I mean, Marvel's doing great work with what they're doing too, but it's definitely different.
Yeah, I think the closest that Marvel came to like the DC Black Label type of thing was with the likes of like Old Man Quill, Dead Man Logan, Logan, that type of thing, where it was more, it was darker. The artwork was more in depth, the line work was more intricate, and you had to really look into the comic. But yeah, that's the only comparison I can really see with.
I mean, Old Man Logan actually is a great comparison. Old Man Logan is like, that's a killer book.
Yeah.
I mean, Mark Miller at his Mark Milleriest. And another one that's one that kind of like is on the fence is Bendis's Moon Knight. Like he did a really cool Moon Knight with Alex Maleev. That the art style was definitely grittier, and even like it was cool to see him do like a legit crazy pants Moon Knight, where he's going schizo and not knowing who he is and all that. That was pretty. I mean, it definitely still belonged in there with the other monthly books. It's not like it wasn't so hardcore that it had to be its own thing like Old Man Logan was, and even that now is tied in. But it's not the same as like Joker Killer Smile that Jeff Lemire did, or Batman Damned, you know.
Yeah, because Jeff Lemire, I found his writing style is great, because he's in the middle of doing Family Tree, which is another great indie comic, and it's, when I was reading it first of all, I was like, this is basically, is this Groot's backstory?
Yeah, exactly.
Is this how Groot was made? But no, it's not. It's a great comic, and it's just I think because obviously everyone knows that Jeff Lemire is really good at writing about the family lifestyle, like everything family orientated, and like the things you don't want to talk about, he brings them to the paper, as it were. So yeah, he was doing great. He's doing great stuff, and like Family Tree is absolutely, it's one of my my top comics that I'm reading this year.
Yeah, Lemire is consistently awesome.
Yeah. I'm just trying to read one of the another.
Yeah. Oh, hey, Perry asked about the issue cap. Yeah, right now. Okay, so The Last God is a 12-issue series, and that's what it's going to be. But that's The Last God. Last God is book one rather, of the Fellspire Chronicles. Mm-hmm. So if we wanted to do more, like if we wanted to do more stuff in the world of Cain and Noon, we could do that. The Last God is we already have set what we're going to do with that book, but there could be companion books for sure. And if you're reading the back matter of the issues, you see like all the other characters that we're starting to introduce. There can very easily be book 2 about the characters that we're seeing start to appear in the back matter. And also there's another arc in which the characters we haven't even seen characters yet, that we could do other books about, all within that world, but set apart from the events of this issue, this story.
It just sounds so exciting. Like I can picture it now, like the trade paperback of book 1 coming out, and it's just got stuff in there, like you're going to be able to put all the maps together and build your own massive map after, when everything's come together. This is like, this sounds so much that there's to do, and this is coming from a fan, so I can just imagine what's going on in your head and how you're thinking this is going to be portrayed and stuff like that. It's great.
God, I would love to do more. Yeah, it's so much work. Last God is so much work, but it's also so rewarding and such a fun time.
So I mean, I guess in your downtime, what do you do? Do you read comics?
Well, downtime is not something that happens, but yeah, honestly, I mean, that's actually the truth. Like I really don't have downtime, but it's important for me to read though. I mean, I'm a writer, so you have to read. Mm-hmm. But it's the same kind of thing that's happening lately that happened to me when I became a musician as well, where I kind of stopped listening to music for fun, which sounds tragic, mm-hmm. but listening to music became kind of like research. Like I listened to things that I listen to influences that I need in my own playing, like as a jazz musician, I'll listen to jazz that is important to know, or I'll listen to different versions of a specific song I'm playing, or solos by a specific trumpet player I want to emulate, or a violinist I want to emulate in my own playing, as on trumpet, I mean, or whatever. Like it's all kind of become like research. And now comics is kind of the same way. And it's different because I love a lot of what I'm reading. So it's not like homework, but it is. I don't know. Like I'm reading it because I have to, but also because I love it, if that makes sense.
And I totally get where you're coming from, because obviously I'm a comic book reviewer and stuff like that. And there's comics out there that I'll read just for the pleasure of it. But then there's comics that I'll read and I'll be like, I want to review this. And I said to my wife when I started doing this, I was like, if it ever gets to a point where I'm reading a comic and it becomes like work, that's when the fun kind of stops. It's like, I'm doing this just to get a review out. I'm not enjoying the comic. And I'm lucky enough this hasn't happened yet. And I think I've got a decent enough mindset to think that comics is always going to be fun, and the reviews is like just the side part of it.
Yeah, well, that's a healthy way to do it, man. That's what you need. Like, you don't want it to be a drag, and it's not for me. Like, I don't hate listening to music. I don't hate reading books. I still love what I'm reading. I will say, just because of the time constraints, I tend to not read prose that much anymore, which I hate. I do read. I listen to them on audiobooks now. So like when there's a prose book I really want to read, typically I'll listen to it in the car, or I'll listen to it when I'm working out or doing some other kind of job I need to do. So I'm still getting that story, but I don't sit and read prose anymore like I used to anymore, which is, I do miss that for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, lately I have been kind of, because I've been rereading the Silmarillion a lot. Something else. There is an audiobook of Silmarillion that I also listen to, but I like just reading it on paper. There's also a lot of Tolkien stuff that is not on audiobook. Like he did a translation of The Fall of Arthur, of the Morta Arthur.
Oh yeah.
And I go over that sometimes, or his translation of Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, and that kind of thing. So there are certain things that I want to experience, especially while I'm writing The Last God, that I do read, on paper, but most of my prose reading is audiobook these days, just because I'm so slammed all the time.
Yeah. And I think earlier you mentioned, so obviously DC Crimes of Passion, it came out yesterday.
Yeah.
And 80 pages of 10 mini stories of our favorite couples. You've got the likes of Joker, Harley Quinn, Batman, Catwoman, Nightwing, Batgirl. How was that for you, like working with some of the most famous couples in Gotham, I guess?
Yeah, it was cool. I mean, it's not every story in there is couples necessarily, but it's all like Valentine's themed in some way. But yeah, they asked me to pitch a few, and I did. One of them actually that I did pitch was that the ventriloquist thing. It was not about him and Scarf. Well, I mean, Scarface is in it, but it's it's a story that I thought was cool. That I still want to do. But they really they liked the Green Arrow, Black Canary one, and it's an honor to write those characters. I mean, it's always been cool to, like, I have like the old Neil Adams, Denny O'Neil Green Arrow stuff, and it was, it's really fun to get to write him now. Like after everything that's happened in his stories since then, doing a story with him and Black Canary was super fun. And I like, love stories are not things I usually do. I mean, there's just an element that'll show up in my stories. But Black Canary and Green Arrow are these two characters that they've always struck me as characters who are just very grateful they have each other, even if things are not good at that moment. They know how lucky they are, and it's just a kind of a nice, refreshing thing to put in the book. So it was a nice change of pace to write that story.
So have you been watching, like, are you a follower of the TV show, like the Arrowverse, and obviously you got Crisis of Infinity Earths and stuff like that?
Actually, no, I'm not opposed to them. I watched the first couple of seasons of Arrow, and I fell out of it. The tone of it was like I loved the pilot, and it got a little teen angsty for me, and I kind of fell out of it. No, but that's good. I mean, it was very good for what it was done, for what they did with it. I'm sorry, what?
No, that's exactly like me. I watched the pilot of it and I was like, yeah, this is great. And then the episodes that followed it, I was like, I'm not 15.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I hung in there for a good bit, but after a while, I was like, that's not quite what I thought it was going to be, and I kind of got out of it. But I mean, I know a lot of people who love that stuff, and it's, I do think it's very well done. It's just not my brand, I guess. Exactly, I guess.
Yeah, but so yeah, talking about DC Crimes of Passion, let's go back to the question, who is your favorite villain? Over the years, obviously there's thousands of villains out there. Who's the one that stands out for you?
Hard to pick just one, the best ones are the ones who are broken heroes, or that they think they're the hero, or they're not like the ones that like cackle evilly, and I can't get into that. But
I've got a mother-in-law that does that.
You know what?
I said I've got a mother-in-law that does that.
Oh yeah, cackles. Yeah, I like Two-Face, and but it's all about how he's executed, right? Like it's Two-Face is a cool premise for a character. I love that he was something different. If I had the chance to write Two-Face, I have very clear opinions on what I would do with him, on how he should be. I also really, depending on how he's executed, I really like Ultron. I love that Ultron is this, like, offspring of humanity that kind of has these weird daddy issues with humanity, you know, like when he's done well, he really resents us a lot, and he resents that he came from us because he regards us as lesser. And I don't know, like when he's done well and he has all that weird baggage in this like killer robot, I think that's really fun and cool. Magneto can be cool.
Yeah.
The Joker can be cool. The Joker, there's so many different versions of the Joker. Like it's hard to say I love or hate the Joker because I've seen 50 different versions of him, and some of those are incredible. Like I love the idea of the Joker, and sometimes I love how he's executed.
What did you think of the Joker movie? Do you think we were seeing the Joker, or do you think we were seeing someone that led on to someone becoming the Joker? I think this is the question that's it hasn't really been answered yet. Was he the Joker? Wasn't he? Did he lead on to someone wanting to be the Joker?
See, my brother said that same thing to me, almost exactly like that. He also thinks that it's just a Joker that leads to the creation of the Joker later. I didn't take it that way. I thought it was probably supposed to be the Joker, even though it's not. I mean, obviously he's much older than Bruce, and it would change things a bit. And like it's nothing like the origin story. Even though I kind of like that they keep changing it. Like I like the Joker should not have a definitive origin, in my opinion. But I don't know. I don't think the filmmakers even really bother asking themselves that question. I don't think they really bothered with it. You know, and I didn't really feel the need to speculate on it, whether he was the Joker or just a guy. It's a very different take. I like the movie a lot. I thought it was very well done. He is not the Joker as I envision him. If I were to write the Joker in a book, it would not be that version. It would not be like Arthur, the character in the film.
Yeah.
But I thought it was very well done, and it sold me on it. Like I thought it was well done enough that it sold me on the story. One of my favorite Joker stories was, I know the one that Alan Moore did has kind of become the
Killing Joke.
Yeah, that's kind of become the origin that everyone kind of accepts about the Joker now. There was another one I really liked called Lovers and Madmen. That gives like an alternate origin that I liked a lot at the time. I have to read it again to see if it holds up as well as I remember. But at the time, I remember thinking, man, this is killer. I thought it was really cool. So
I'm just going to write that down. It's called The Lovers
and Madmen. Yeah. I like it. It's kind of if I remember right, it's kind of a similar thing where it's kind of like this loser guy who's not funny, and then he through tragedy he becomes this monster, and suddenly he kind of is driven crazy. Like there are similarities with that and the Alan Moore thing, but the art is just very out and rough looking and just fits it very well. I just remember him like coming out of the lake with like looking like the Joker for the first time and looking at the moon, and there's like this super psycho looking rabbit in the moon, and he just thinks it's hilarious, and he just can't stop laughing at the bunny that's in the moon. And how creepy it was. And I thought it was great. It was very well done.
Yeah, because for me, the Joker, the movie, there was the biggest similarities was from the Alan Moore book. He was a foul comedian. He didn't really get it. Everyone turned against him, and then he turned against them for turning against him. And you kind of see that in the Killing Joke. And that's kind of, for me, that's where it kind of came from. But there's so many variations. I think one of the greatest was Heath Ledger. It was insane. I went to Comic-Con in the October just gone, and I was dressed up as Heath Ledger's Joker. So I had the green hair, I had the lipstick on and everything. I was in the nurse's outfit, and getting on a train at 8:00 on a Saturday morning, quite cold in London, just getting weird looks. It was quite good.
Yeah, I mean, I know it's not like controversial to say that's your favorite version, right? Because he's amazing. But that's my favorite version. He's incredible in that movie, and he manages to be funny despite the fact how psycho he is.
Yeah,
and I think it's important. I think it's really good.
And I think the way that, obviously, it's unfortunate the events that followed that, but that's one of the times you can say that someone really put their everything into a role.
Yeah, completely.
And I think even the fact that when it came out and he had his little notebook and everything in there was, you could make a movie out of that itself.
Yeah.
I mean, I think his dad did a documentary on it of how he went inside himself, didn't want anyone around, and really became the person that he was trying to portray.
Mm-hmm.
It's quite
hats off to him. And it seems like Joaquin Phoenix did the same thing for his version. I mean, he also really sold it 100%. So I love how many different versions of the Joker there are, and like I love that they've kept it, nebulous, kind of kept him an enigma, and he's definitely a cool character.
Because my wife asked me a few weeks ago, she was like, there's so many Jokers, like who is the original Joker? And I was like, I guess the way it's been done, the Joker is who you want the Joker to be. If you think his backstory is from The Killing Joke, go with that. If you think his backstory is from the movie, go with that. If you think his backstory is from Heath Ledger's portrayal of the Joker, go with that. I guess the way that they've opened up the character, they've kind of left it down to the reader or the watcher to come up with their own backstory of who they want the Joker to be.
Sure. Well, plus DC continuity has always been all about the multiverse, right? They've really made, that's one of the things that makes DC so cool. Is, well, I mean, Marvel has that too now, sort of. There's different versions of everything, and DC just embraces that so wholeheartedly. And like there can be Kingdom Come Superman and Red Sun Superman and Golden Age Superman. Like there can be so many different versions of a thing. And they don't contradict each other necessarily.
Yeah.
And that way it just opens you up. Like you don't have to, the same actor doesn't have to play the same Batman forever. It can be, you can have all the different versions, and they don't, it's okay. They can coexist.
I mean, because we're currently getting a vampire that's gonna play Batman, which is and I think it's just been confirmed that Colin Farrell is going to be playing the Penguin.
Yeah.
So that's
last I heard.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. It's going to be an interesting film. I mean, for me, the Dark Knight trilogy, Christian Bale was one of the best. Like the Nolan film trilogy, that was an amazing Batman trilogy to watch, and you can still just put it on now and you get absorbed, you get fully taken into what that world has been created is all about. Yeah, no, it was a huge achievement for sure. And I think we were just talking about like the Joker and stuff like that, and then obviously going back to like DC, they did Tom Taylor did the Heroes in Crisis, which again, Tom King, Tom King, he did the Heroes in Crisis, which was absolutely amazing. I really got involved in that because it was like the superheroes at the end of the day were just normal people. They've got the same issues as everyone, and they just needed someone to talk to. Right. Yeah, I thought that was, I like that book a lot too. Like I really like how Tom did that. I mean, Tom's great about putting a lot of himself into his books, and he's been very open about his struggles with anxiety and his time spent in the war zone and all that. And that was, I think, Heroes in Crisis was an important book for him to tell. Tom's a friend. He actually lives in DC, in Washington DC, not too far from me. And, he's been very open about putting himself on the page, and that's something that James Tynion talks about in his work as well. Like he talks about the importance of putting yourself in your work, and that was something I heard very early on. I saw him on a panel before he was a big deal, and I think he was doing like a boom thing. Talked about the woods, which I think at the time was pretty new. It was just starting, and talked about how like he just barfed all of himself onto the page, and that's what the woods was. And that made a big impression on me, and that was Warlords of Appalachia for me. I put a lot of myself in that book, hence the music and the military ties and politics and all that. Yeah, nice. It's I think when you can do that and you can put your everything in and you can see the good that comes out of it. I mean, there's not much more Appalachian you can get really from that. If people are out there, they're enjoying what you do, I guess you can give yourself a big pat on the back and continue doing what you're doing. And I think the fact that it's clearly you're doing that with The Last God is a massive credit to you for creating
thank you, man.
Amazing world. I mean, I grew up at the time of like Lord of the Rings and stuff like that. So in a way, I'm kind of reliving my childhood in a fantasy world where I'm a grown up now and I'm reading The Last God and I'm like, oh my God, how is this going to happen? What's going to go on next? Blah, blah, blah. And it's just wicked. And when I was growing up, I used to watch The Lord of the Rings. So it was really sweet. My nan would give me the box set. I wouldn't watch it when it came out. My nan would give me like the collector's item of the box set. And then when number 2 would come out, The Twin Towers, I'd look at number 2, and then I'd read, watch all 3 of them when they finally came out. And I'm doing the same with your book. I'm reading
man, I love that
issue when it gets back, so it's constantly fresh. I'm not thinking, oh, that was last month, what happened there? I'll read all of them, and then I get back to scratch, and I'm like, right, this is amazing, this is cracking on, let's do this.
Awesome. Well, I love hearing that, man. I really appreciate you reading it, and hopefully we won't disappoint you. The art just keeps getting better, and some heavy stuff's coming in the story, so I hope you dig it.
I cannot wait. But I just want to say a massive thank you to you for taking the time out.
It really is my pleasure. Thanks for having me on. I'd love to do it again.
Oh, mate, definitely. It's been absolutely amazing. I've loved the questions that Perry Comics has.
Dude, Perry, thanks for the questions, brother.
It's been absolutely great having you on. And yet again, thank you so much for taking the time. And I cannot wait to read what happens in The Last God. I think.
Yeah, we'll see, man.
You obviously know what's happening. You obviously know how it's going to end. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to it.
Man, I'm stoked. Let's talk again after it comes out.
Definitely. Thank you so much, Philip.
All right, brother. Thank you.
Pleasure, dude. Cheers, dude.
Yeah, man. You too.
Cheers. Bye.